news, and it's come to the point that we're pretty much the only independent news outlet covering UNO anymore. Journalism's in a crisis right now. Professional journalism is, and so we're happy to fill that gap. And we had a tremendous 2024, thanks in large part to the funding that we received. Couple things. I oversee the students, but I don't tell them what to cover or how to cover it. It's all driven by them. I'm just kind of part manager, and then post-production, I'm kind of a mentor, telling them what we could have done differently or whatever, but they drive this enterprise and they did a great job. Last year, like I said, 2024 was a great year. Our website reached more people than it ever has. It's up for national awards for best collegiate website. The Gateway's up for best print edition, and the Gateway's up for best crisis coverage, which you can probably figure out what that was over. Speaking of, last year's audit put the focus on the question, are student fees being used to reach a broad base of students? And I want to tell you that that's the sole purpose of the Gateway, is to reach as broad a base as we can, to educate UNO students and staff on what's going on campus, to try to create community on a campus where the commuter nature of things kind of makes that difficult at times. I'm always challenging the staff to cover the character and characters of UNO, to hold up a mirror that reflects the good and at times the not so good of campus. And so we cover a lot. They work really hard for minimum wage, and I think we're up to 12 staffers now. Anyway, they'll get more into that. Isaac Nielsen, our editor, and Stephen Pura, our all-around leader, will take you through that. But I wanted to leave you with, we're a totally open book. We demand that of others as reporters. So if you all have any questions about how we do things or the way we do things or what we use for our funding, more than happy to answer those. Drew has my cell phone. I'm responsive to all of that as well, anytime, and especially over the next week. So thank you, guys.
Is there anyone else here for open forum? Awesome. With no one else here for open forum, I officially call open forum closed. Next up on the agenda, we have our presentations. I would like to invite the presenter from Maverick Productions on up to give their presentation.
Good evening, committee, and everyone who joined us tonight. My name is Lilu Guerrero, and I'm the Vice President of Finance for Maverick Productions, and I will be speaking on behalf of our team. Okay. A little bit about Maverick Productions. We're the designated student programming board at UNO. We're an organization made completely of students, for the students. We do have two advisors who did join us tonight, Aaron Lohr and Bill Pickett. We strive to create inclusive and engaging events for all on campus. And in addition, we foster collaboration and a sense of community with each other, fellow organizations, and the Omaha area. Maverick Production hosts monthly events. Some are bigger and more known than others, but I would like to touch point on some of our more notable events, starting off with Glow with Mav Pro. This event occurs during Durango Days and sets the tone for the remainder of the year. We open the event to UNO students and the community to allow incoming students to feel more comfortable and experience what signature events UNO has to offer. This year, we had over 1,200 attendees, roughly about 900 UNO students and 300 community members attend. Our next event was MAV Market, which was held in October. The concept for this event kind of strayed from our typical events that we're known for hosting, but our team embraced every moment of change and we loved it. Even though we were not able to hold MAV Market during a normal farmers market season, we still had a great turnout of over 500 total attendance, which was community and student combined. This event was also a collaboration with the Maverick Food Pantry and Art Club students who were our primary vendors, as well as local music artists and food vendors from the area. And then I just wanted to highlight some of the feedback we got. We pushed out a response survey as this was a new event to kind of gauge the interest for potentially continuing it. And overall, the comments we received were very supportive and in favor of hosting this annually, which we have looked to including in our normal timeline. Our next event was our 5K celebration. This was a milestone event for our PR team, Colton, Anna, and Armando, who have worked endlessly and continue to do so to grow our social media platform. And then I did want to highlight, in one short month of being on the exec team, they were able to grow our following over 200 followers to hit this milestone. And we're currently sitting at 5,115 followers. Our next event that I wanted to highlight was our Maverick Miracle Night, which was just held recently. This was a major collaboration event with all parties in the Spirit and Tradition and Signature Events Office and the UNO hockey team. Maverick Productions' part in this was funding the Bears and merchandise so that 100% of the proceeds were able to go to the Dance Marathon's mission for Children's Nebraska. On the night of the event, they raised $2,000 and donated over 700 bears. And I wanted to highlight that these sweatshirts were also designed by a local student and our director of graphics, Armando. Next, I'll be focusing on the different types of collaboration that MavPro offers in UNO. The first type of collaboration we offer is with student organizations and other offices. One of our executive team's primary goals were to expand our collaboration efforts with other student organizations. And some of our highlighted orgs and offices were the Husker Watch Party, the QTS Drag Show, Maverick Miracle Night, and then partnering with the Collegiate Pan-Hellenic Council and National Pan-Hellenic Council. And through the Board of Regents policy, Chapter 5, Section 9, Clauses 1 and 2, subsection E states that the opportunity to allocate funds to other student organizations and non-agencies, which allows us to offer our grant program. With this, groups are able to request funding biannually. The application is found in MavSync, as well as the two different types of grants you can apply for. There's a $750 grant and a $2,000 option. And then thus far, we have approved 6 grants. We approved one yesterday, actually, that we are working on. Okay. Our allocation for the grant breakdown, currently we're able to completely fund the grant program through our reserves. We have set aside a separate category that the grant program operates out of, and we monitor monthly. And as of thus far, we have used $8,560 of the a little over 17,000 we were allocated in July. And then we're predicting at least 5 more student organizations will apply for grants semester, which will hopefully tap into the remaining $8,900-ish that we have in that category. And then MavPro's budget allocation for the 24-25 fiscal year was $100,000. We allocated these funds into the following categories of general programming, which are our monthly smaller events, traditional events, which would be events like Glow, and then administrative costs and PR team, which is upkeep on our equipment, gear, and such. And then as of January 30th, we have completely been operating out of our reserves with the outstanding amount that we've had in our reserves the past couple of years. We, as an executive team, made a cognizant decision to try and tap into this fund more to help alleviate future stress for SABC. And then we currently have, as of January 30th, $215,000, $139.65 sitting in our reserves, and we are predicting about $60,000 for the remainder of the semester, which would leave us with $145,000. And then our proposed budget for the 2025-2026 year is $125,000. Breaking this down more, we have planned to allocate over 90% of our budget for events, with $60K being put towards general programming, broken down into 5 small monthly events, roughly costing $10,000 each. These are events that we come up with in our event groups, and they change every year. And then we allow for some comfort room just in case we encounter variable costs such as like food trucks or miscellaneous fees and insurance. MavPro plans to put $30,000 towards our traditional events, which would be Glow and Late Night Breakfast, which is like Durango's Days Part 2 when we come back in the winter. All right, and then for our large events, we'd like to set aside $25,000 with these being our highest attended events during the year that we also continually change, such as our De-Stress Fest events and Maverick Miracle Night. And then on the administrative side, we plan to allocate $2,500 each to our admin team and PR team. Our admin budget covers any new equipment we may need, such as signs, scanners, tables, subscriptions, member gear, and insurance event expenses. Our PR budget is focused on purchasing materials that will be utilized to market and promote Maverick Productions names, such as the 300 shirts that we handed out at MavFest, upgrading and expanding our PR team's gear, which was seen through our mini mic series, and covering any tabling materials that we need throughout the year. And with the remaining $5,000, we plan to put this towards our grant program in order to continue operating out of reserves. And we are also looking at increasing the grant limits for both tiers. Then our reserves plans for the 25-26 fiscal year with the $145,000. Next year is a concert year. So with this in mind, our reserves are typically used to fund majority of our concert. We've raised the artist budget up to 110,000 in hopes that finding a more well-known established artist will draw in a bigger crowd, as well as appeal a larger attraction to like more students. We're also expecting another drastic increase in event insurance, which is why we've set aside $20,000. Our 2022 and 2024 concert difference in event insurance was a little over $12,000. So preparing for this expense is a vital and necessary part of putting on the concert to ensure everyone's safety. And we would like to be prepared for that with its separate category. And then, as I said prior, our grant program, we would like to continue funding out of reserves, hopefully keeping 10,000 in there for the upcoming year. And then just a few final remarks I'd like to make. Maverick Productions strives to program fun and inclusive events for the entire student body to enjoy. With the help of these allocated funds, we will continue to collaborate with UNO student organizations in the Omaha area to provide a sense of community at UNO. And during the fall semester, Maverick Productions has reached countless milestones. We've hit attendance records in all of our events. We've reached new demographics with the student body, and we've created 3 new events and collaborated with more than 10 organizations and offices on campus. And then I would now like to open the floor to you all if you have any questions for me. I know collaboration was something that we can't.
Hello. Sorry. Collaboration, I know was something that was brought up in student government. I don't know if it's the same for MapPro about us not being able to collaborate with offices and student organizations. Is that the same for MapPro or is there a different policy, please?
With MavPro, collaborations do look a little different than I think how student government operates. We offer, through our grant program, we are able to collaborate through funding with our Maverick Miracle Night and the Spirit and Tradition Office that was allowed. We have looked at all the bylaws and policies and ensured that we've followed all the correct proceedings.
Commissioner Rye, will prepare to double check just for further clarification next week, just to make sure that that's something that can differ among the different day groups.
This isn't necessarily a question that you would need to answer right here on the floor, but I was curious as to some of the attendance statistics for some of those larger events. It seemed like you had monthly classification, larger event classification, and then your premier event classification using different language. But I was just curious to see year to year what amount of students are attending these events, and could you talk a little bit about the numerical impact? If you don't have that information in front of you, totally okay. Is that something you could possibly provide to the commission after the fact?
Yes, so we collect attendance when it was previously used with presence. Scanning NUIDs would give us the general idea. Obviously, there are some malfunctions because technology isn't perfect, but I can go back. Our larger events, the way we track attendance is our monthly events, we typically hit anywhere between 150 and 300 students. Our larger events, oh my goodness, where'd it go? Oh, I scrolled all the way up. For our large events, those typically hit anywhere between 300 and 500, and then our traditional events like Glow are no less than 1,000 yearly. Yes.
Kind of general use. Thank you for your presentation, first off. General point of inquiry, you'd referenced expenses coming out of reserve. Is that a line item in your general budget, or are you referencing to your reserves in a different way? Just help me understand what that means to you.
Yes. So our reserves are basically our emergency fund that we are given during the 2019-2020 year when the pandemic hit. All of our remaining funds for that year were all pushed into our reserves fund. We are not allowed to access reserves until we've completely used our budget allocated for that fiscal year. So as we go through it, the past few years, we have not been able to tap into our reserves as much just due to the fact of the amount in there. But yes, if that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. It
Okay.
did. I was just generally trying to align if there was a line item title or if that was a reference to your general reserves as they
Yeah,
have.
just our general reserves.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just for clarification, I know you said for concerts you pull out of reserves. So before you do pull out reserves, one of these line items have to be, I guess, depleted. So are you taking the money from large events and that's when it's finished, you go into reserves, or could you clarify that?
Could you clarify what you mean by taking out of our larger events?
The large events?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we have concerts biannually. Our allocation, on a non-concert year, we typically do not tap into our reserves, and any leftover money from that fiscal year gets pushed into the reserves, which is our concert fund. So on a non-concert year, our large events typically will get pushed into our general programming. But on a concert year, we like to separate them just so we as a team have a better understanding of how money is being spent and allocated in certain areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'll speak. Don't want to waste the time, Mike being asked on the around the table. You said that there was a sixth organization being grants. For the record, I want to know what that sixth organization is.
I would like to yield my time to Bill Pickett as they have more information about our grant program.
Sure, question.
Being considered for a grant, that sixth.
Half were coming up.
She said that there was a current sixth organization.
We have one hopper
Yeah.
with organizations, but we anticipate a couple more. So
Okay.
they've budgeted money in there from now until the end of April to make sure we have some for the. I know we have two groups that have talked to MapPro about filling out the grant app. Did that answer?
Yes.
It's hard because every semester we don't know how many grants they're gonna get. So we kind of base it off, and we had 5, so our assumption is we'll have 5 or 6 in the spring, but that could be different depending on the year.
Could you just explain how the grant program works?
So our grant program, we are allowed to give these funds. There's that clause in the region's policy allows funding for non-agency and student organizations that don't necessarily receive outside funding help. So after they fill out the application in MavSync, our grant program committee will interview with them and talk a little bit more about like the details of their event, why they're asking for the grant, because there are certain stipulations we do not allow the money to be used for, such as like travel fees or other miscellaneous fees that might not be geared towards the the benefit of the whole organization. So after that, they are either approved or not necessarily denied. They're shown how to rework it in order to get approval. So they'll work with that. And then after the approval, they work with Bill Pickett to order the necessary items, track the budget, and then just kind of keep an overall eye over the expenses.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. So I had a quick question regarding concert and non-concert years. Could you tell me a little bit about how the fluctuation between this kind of like biennial concert structure impacts your budget? Is your budget pretty consistent year to year? Does it rise pretty rapidly on an off year and then decrease and it kind of goes back and forth? Just any information the commission could have regarding why we might see larger or more substantive changes in your budget year to year, or why we might not.
Yes. I know in prior years, our budget has been more consistent. As of the pandemic year, our budget has been more kind of dormant and level, just given how much we have in reserves and we hadn't used them yet. But typically our asking allocation doesn't change drastically without either like reason to like assume why we would need to, such as like the event insurance jump. But typically it's very steady flow. We're just more, I guess, what is the word? Scarce with our spending on concert years, just to ensure that we are setting enough aside for concert in concert years and then setting enough aside for non-concert years, because we don't want to just spend all our budget every year. We want to try and save and keep that little emergency fund in case we need to like reschedule or a natural disaster happens or something.
I would just like to say that we've hit the 10-minute mark for questioning. If someone would like to make a motion, if there are more questions, to extend the time you can. If not, we will go on. So. With no.
I was gonna move to end discussion.
Next up, I would like to bring up the Gateway for their presentation.
Give and take. Okay. What's up, guys? I'm Isaac Nielsen. I'm the current editor-in-chief at the Gateway, and I'm here with
Stephen Pura. I'm the ad manager over at the Gateway. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So on our agenda today, we have our key highlights, general expense breakdown, professional wages and benefits, our staff salaries, total budget requests, and breakdown per student. And then we'll have time at the end for questions.
So SABC supported us last year. Where did that money go? For starters, we built a new website, which in turn provided us with a record year for page views. We had 21,000 plus page views in November alone, and keep setting records this fall and into this winter and spring. We unveiled a new podcast and a new crime log recently that can be found on our website. Hired a new editor, news editor, culture editor, and our staff doubled in size. And we obviously provided blockbuster coverage of campus and the audit and everything like that that Todd mentioned in the open forum. We currently are in a new newsroom and, like I mentioned, our new bigger staff.
And then to expand on that a little bit, in 2024, the Gateway hit about 21,500 page views on our website alone in the month of November. That's a 43% increase from our spring output of 15,000 page views per month. For those that know a little bit of the history with the Gateway, we didn't exactly have an audience beforehand. So coming into this year, it's been great with the support of SABC. Our team has doubled in size, which ultimately leads to better work, quicker work, and more timely news that all students are affected by, and also some of the staff in the room as well. We launched a new podcast with some of the money that we were awarded last year in SABC, and this helped diversify, but also accessibility for all students on campus, those that maybe aren't into reading. I know I'm not as much. Like our podcast, and we've gotten a lot of support from the School of Communications on that. And on our social media alone, with all the help of our staff, we've hit 12,600 impressions. So that's views, likes, shares, and ultimately all in all, in last year, it all amplified the Gateway's ability to output a great product for the students. So let's get straight into the budget breakdown. And I'll explain this. On the right side in the red column, you're going to see our last year. The red number is our ultimate total that changed to this year in the white section, which is our green number there. We've gone down in our total expense for our general expenses, and we'll go ahead and break that down here for you.
So first main expense is just publishing and printing. We see this as a sort of built-in advertising for us because at the end of the day, like it's hard to call yourself a newspaper, even though we call ourselves like a publication without, printing the news. So we print 600 to 800 issues each time we print, which we aim to do around monthly, minus like the summer and everything like that. Costs $600 per printing cycle. You've likely seen us in Milo Bale or at various locations around campus, serving both campuses with that. In addition to this print editions, we also release like bookmarks and things like that, promotional materials to both partner with, essentially to draw more engagement to our website. And that includes stocking those print editions with QR codes, which has further increased the draw to our website. Overall, just increasing our brand awareness and getting the word out about the Gateway and getting it into as many hands as possible.
Our next line item is our dues, fees, and subscriptions. This is the bulk of this line item covers the cost of our website. It is professionally made by Blocks Digital. We've gotten a lot of compliments on our website. We're up for an award specifically over website design in the journalist field. We've gotten a lot of people inquiring about our website from Creighton to Lincoln. So also in this line item, we see our membership for the Nebraska Press Association and the American Collegiate Press and College Media Association.
So another budget line item is just food and water. As we get our print editions into the hands of students, we are also, providing them with a little pick-me-up, some candy or anything like that. Just brightening their days a little bit. And then it also provides refreshments for like our volunteer board, and that's pretty much the only, compensation they get. Then they oversee us and meet 6 times a year, and that also just helps us increase awareness and increase the draw of the Gateway.
Next line item we have here is our equipment and software. In 2024, we moved to our new newsroom and we upgraded our software with the help of Anna Berg over at IT. We took a lot of advantage of Rockbrook. Rockbrook had some great sales on cameras, which allowed us to buy a Canon frame shown in the picture and also a Sony 4K video camera. With that, we launched our brand new high quality podcast. But with this line item, we still have some more things we need to purchase. We need a second high quality microphone and a mount for that as well. We are looking to buy a sports lens for hockey, soccer, and also like volleyball and basketball. Going along with that, we also have a laptop that we are budgeting for to help with our growing need for digital media. We also need to have editing software. People need laptops on our staff, so that's our line item for that.
We also have travel. You might have seen earlier in last year, we were on the road a lot around March when hockey was on a big run out to Colorado and then up to Sioux Falls and St. Paul. And also with volleyball and conference basketball and everything like that, traveling around. Most of our travel budget goes towards sports, and that really just depends on, which teams make it where. But this is a great opportunity for us to draw engagement like more than anywhere else, because sometimes we're even the only media outlet covering these events, and that allows, people to get inside coverage as if they were there that they wouldn't get anywhere else.
Also on the bottom here, we have our miscellaneous items. These will be our phone, postage, and office supplies. The 660s are for our phone, our postage is $50, and our office supplies are $150. This covers general journalistic needs for us. And now we're going to go into our wages and benefits for this semester. This number is not decided by the commissioners. This is decided by our publications board that oversees us, those members. And so on our end, for budget-wise, we decided to look at the numbers ourselves. Our two advisors were able to notice that they don't gain full benefits, and we were able to cut that out of our budget, which saved about $30,000 there. It was a very large savings for us, and it was a decision made by our board to help save the cost for students. Next, we have our staff salaries. You see a change here, an increase. This increase is mainly because the minimum wage has changed. All of our workers currently are working for minimum wage, besides me and Isaac. With the minimum wage going from 12 hours to $13.50, and then eventually in the future it'll be at $15 on January 1st in 2026. We adjusted for that cost as well. All in all, our total expenses, we go from 168,000 down to 130,000. That is a 22.4 reduction from last year's budget. And we did some of the math, and we've come to figure that it only cost $8.73 for every single student, every alumni, people in Omaha, and also all faculty to receive a up-to-date website, a clean social media, a newspaper that the workers get to put in their portfolio, but also that all students get to enjoy. So with that, I'd like to leave off saying, oh, never mind, we're going to questions.
Wanted to begin by saying thank you for the presentation. My first question is with regards to dues, fees, and subscriptions. Is it okay if we first pop back to that slide?
Yeah.
Thank you. This year, during a lot of the conversations relating to the audit and the resulting purchasing plans, we had conversations related to the topic of broad-based application. Could you tell us a little bit about how support for a Gateway-specific membership to the Nebraska Press Association, American Collegiate Press, and the College Media Association can be beneficial to the larger student body in the context of the work you do to support students as a newspaper?
Yeah. So with that, our journalists in general are able to learn from these memberships. Without our journalists kind of having that professional knowledge at their fingertips, we kind of run into a situation where we have journalists that don't know how to report. So to serve that broad basis, obviously you need connections, but also some training in that aspect. I believe if I can I yield time to our publications manager? I'll yield some time to Todd to explain a little bit more about that.
It's a good question. One of the things that student newspapers, like professional newspapers, are struggling with across the country is how to reach. I mean, everybody has a fire hose of information on their phone at any time. And it's like, how do we make ourselves relevant? That is an incredible way. And then there's, we got some economic benefit this fall too, because the American Collegiate Press put out the word that the insane campaign spending had trickled down to student newspapers even. And so if you saw those, it's the worst campaign in the world. They paid us to run it. It was like, don't ruin your voter record, which I thought was a dumb way to get people to vote, but they didn't ask my opinion. So, and so they paid us. And so we we got from it. I'll take those are $100 a piece. I think it's money well spent. But if you want, I'll just give you this, if you want to trim that, we can find a different way to pay for it.
Any other questions?
Just a note in response, no concern about the specific cost itself or the line item, more to understand just how we would be still maintaining alignment, the beneficence that it has to your organization. I think it helps to illuminate that because it sounds like from your description, it's providing a really wonderful service to your organization, to the students involved in it, that trickles down to the broader base of students. So thank you all for the feedback.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
I was wondering, a plan to dip into your reserve funds for the coming year?
Yes, so we have a $24,000 spend down in our reserves that is planned to go over the course of 3 years. This will go to be paying staff and making other extraneous purchases that we might need. So we do have that in our plan in accordance with the spend down that all need. And Todd has, I yield my time to Todd.
Just to clarify, that $24,000 is to reduce the student fee request. So we're not using it for anything else but to reduce that amount. And I think we're down $250 per student from last year. You saw the number of 22.4%. But we will spend $24,000. The Education Board decided to spend $24,000 out of our reserves over the next 3 years, maybe 4 years. To spend down our request, our budget request.
Go ahead.
Just, sorry, a little bit of a delay on the microphones. Just a question relating to that either you or advisor could answer. I was curious as to the reduction that we're seeing this year of the 22.4%. It sounds like, and I may be under a false impression, that that's being subsidized by the reserve surplus that currently exists. Do you anticipate once that surplus has been spent that you may have an increase in cost? So for example, the sustainability of decreasing as much as was decreased this year, that over the course of the next few years, as that surplus is spent down, you may need to re-increase to account for what reserves had been assisting with in terms of cost for the paper. I just wanted to make sure that we could have that in the minutes if that is the case, so that we'd know that in future years, we may need to support the paper with an additional increase in fees.
Yes, there is a potentiality there. Hindsight is 50-50. We don't necessarily know what the next 4 years will look like. But yes, Todd, do you want to speak on that as well?
Thank you for noting that. I think probably Bill feels the same way, but yeah, we'll spend down those reserves and then we're at, I mean, if we get a huge influx, another election campaign, God forbid, but another lucrative election campaign or something that can enable us to spend it down. I wanted to add the other thing that my publications board decided is that and I think I put it in the letter to you all, but we will, how should I say, keep no more than 10%. I think campus policy allows you to keep 50%, but we'll keep no more than 10% of student fees per year. And the only reason that we would keep that is if these guys don't work as many hours as I think they're going to work. And if we have that money left over, we'll apply it to next year's spend down, if that makes sense. Because I think it does make sense that students benefit out of it, that they are here, not us build up some bulk cash reserves, for a future date. So yeah, the short answer, yeah, and we may be back up around 155,000, something like that, if we don't have anything to spend down.
Just a general question. Thank you for your presentation. Content. You mentioned in your presentation collaboration and coordination with community and institution stakeholders, which is great. Would you just, if you have the opportunity to share about what your coordination looks like when you stood up, it seems like the website, does look nice, I will say. What does the coordination look like with folks at Marcom or the Office of Strategic Marketing Communications as far as leveraging or not leveraging their website system, CMS or Cascade? And then also, just curious about the podcast, which I think also you shared was a new opportunity to engage with your consumers. What the conversations might look like with, television as a CFAM school communication entity. So I'm just curious about those two things.
So in terms of collaboration currently, we are a separate entity. From them, we reach out. We're an independent news publication, which ultimately leads us to rely on ourselves. If there was room for collaboration there, then it's a possibility. Currently, right now, with understanding of where the gateway was, we honestly couldn't have predicted these numbers that we were doing so well and we were impacting as many people as we were. So that's a growth question in my consideration. Yes, I would love to collaborate. If it was necessary for us as a news and independent publication to do so, then it would be worth doing something with that. I know we have some of the Marcom students and even UNO TV students, they will stop in. Some people need internship experience, which I know they can achieve through us, but we don't necessarily inherently have a line of communication with them currently. So,
awesome. Thank you.
Are there any further questions for the gateway? Awesome. With that, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next presentation. Commissioner Meister,
I move to group for 10 minutes.
there's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Meister to move to groove for 10 minutes. Does someone second it? Commissioner Koenig? Awesome. With that, we will move to groove for 10 minutes and we will return at 6:05 p.m.
Don't worry about it. I think everyone's all right.
Are we being dead to us right now?
Our office used to be where that. No, I'm on that way, Mike. I got it.
People probably won't come to you, but like you're just there and just like put it out that you were there.
I thought that.
You could just like.
Good luck. How do you about?
So you can get it for, yeah, so, finish your application. You have to.
And you can now.
I have plenty of room. How thoroughly are these? Good chance. Who was that guy?
So yeah, there is on the SharePoint. I'm assuming that the first few pages.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, and they were actually. Which is
Yeah, I should make sure I wasn't missing something.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, but the answer is.
I don't think
Yours are gonna benefit.
I will get you guys access.
That was too good.
Are you on the FGSA? Are you graduating?
Yes.
I'm glad you guys. Because I was gonna say something. I was gonna say you should be ready to tell.
Like technical phrase.
Seriously? Because they don't really do much stuff.
Yeah.
So they just kind of like. They don't even have like dogs.
Funny as mine, yeah.
They're like. And so like, I can't really take it seriously. So I'm like, okay, fine.
Like the
Coming back again.
Yeah. It's like a.
Well, because last year I took over the questions for the second.
Any other time?
First day.
It's supposed to be high school.
We're not gonna talk about that.
Or.
Look at you. What are you doing? Pretty good. How are yourself? All right. Taking notes. Previously. It's going all right. It's going pretty good. Excited, where are you gonna present? No, if Shawnee's voice goes out, then yes, I'm gonna take over. She is, as of yesterday, I was gonna do it, because yesterday she woke up and didn't have a voice. And so I practiced the presentation, so I'm on standby, but hopefully I'm not. People feel well, see. Team. I don't know if it's fun to take like SGA out, SGA. Personally, I think that's fine, maybe the shorter night, Tuesday will be. That's what I think, but of course, I don't know what you guys have in store. I'm optimistic, I think both.
LeBron's got some.
I was like, oh, where you? I don't think it's going to be bad. I don't know if you.
Oh.
I had a. Make the change because we can't do, because the Senate approves the larger number and then we. Did the math and everything, not that it's like $3,000. Last year, it's like we're starting to wind it down a little bit.
Over like 20 years. And so it just became this the story had a point of plus other than the salacious. Not a single soul read it. Let's go. Oh, my son.
I'm like, here's the stuff when you're like.
No,
That's what can you have inspiration. It's supposed to be.
well. Oh, I am.
So worst comes to worst.
No, yeah, I want to just like, I now know.
All right, next meeting, you guys need anything.
They were coming.
So. Yeah,
I'm gonna
definitely.
This year, it's all understood.
I think
So they have
that's the only way we see that.
You have 20 minutes.
I know, that's why I ended up going.
If you need anything.
It's just like-
Nice job. Steven, you only have 2 more of these to do.
2 more.
Yeah, it's a lot of progress.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
I'll be GA, so I won't have any time to teach you guys.
Live stream.
And I'll be in night class, so I literally won't be able to do this. Be around the night, yeah, because I'm picking up.
Everyone. Just.
Yeah, so let me around the excuses for my undergraduate.
Halo, he posts the internet. I'm just the internet.
Basically saying that we might be interviewing less. So did you think that?
edited our final. Are you serious? It's your idea. You're arguing against yourself. How do I can't stand?
Sounds like you might need a look.
Yeah, I know, this is all one. Oh, so many audio clips, how much many audio clips like, they don't know how to do it once, they just hear. More about.
There's a lot, but you can't edit your cheat interview.
Yeah, that's what kept me.
I guess your budget.
Oh, no, they need to go back to- it's like ASMR.
Because someone, well, to be fair, he went to Stanford, so it doesn't really count.
Okay, so you work in a hospital, so maybe you actually have a better idea. Taking camera that can view, because you can use it for like, yeah, it sounds expensive, like high pack, like.
Let's get up there.
And.
Honestly, like I have it.
Yeah. I don't wanna wait for you, but like, she's gonna graduate. So I feel like.
Free over the summer. I was just kind of like. Like I have like.
You know, ahead of it's the.
Professor of surgical oncology. No, but as.
Yeah,
I know, it's
we're
fine.
going, yeah, that's the time.
Say something.
It's back there.
From someone else.
This is so nice.
About 10 minutes.
Yeah,
I had the fast 10 minutes.
She said she was gonna go slow down.
Yeah, that's what we do. I'm telling you, I also heard this thing, and I'm not like even in the.
Vote to approve for 10 minutes is over.
Yeah, right.
I know.
More extra time.
Okay, sorry, little technical issue there. We're all good now. Okay. With the Move to Groove over, we are now going to move on to our next presenter. We will go on to Student Government Association.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ishani Adidam. I'm the student body president, student regent this year for Student Government Association. Also do want to preface this presentation by saying I lost my voice yesterday and I'm slowly recovering. This is the loudest I can speak. And also I have never had to speak for 20 minutes thus far in these 2 days. So if I trip over my words or like I just stop speaking, my chief of staff, Nate Ostick, is going to take over to finish out the presentation. But hopefully it will be a painless process for me. Today we're going to be discussing the 25-26 budget request. starting off, I wanted to give you some introduction into what association. We could just leave it there, just in case. Hello, hello. Okay, perfect. So, starting off with what UNO Student Government Association does, we exist to advance the student experience. As the official voice of the student body, we represent, empower, and serve all students on this campus. We also advocate for student interests to administration, faculty, staff, and the Nebraska Board of Regents, as well as the Omaha community. And we also continuously strive to create a welcoming environment and provide impactful contributions to the student body. In addition to the larger organization of Student Government Association, we also do have 6 agencies that work underneath us to better serve the needs of our fellow students, and understanding that our student body does have a very diverse set of students. We have created a number of agencies whose mission is to promote, educate, and serve our campus towards these marginalized groups. So these groups are American Multicultural Services, AMS, First Generation Student Agency, FGSA, International Student Services, ISS, Network of Disability Awareness, NDA, Queer and Trans Services, QTS, and Women and Gender Equity Center, WGEC. So this is our overall budget request. Don't worry about like understanding all of this right now. We're gonna break it down line item by line item. So here are our unchanged requests. So starting off with the counter retainer, this just ensures that we are correctly and properly like filing our financial agreements. This is a contractual thing that we do through Forvis, and that has always been $8,000. The next line item is contingency. So this is just an in case line item that we have in our budget. So if a line item within our budget is overdrafted, we're able to pull out a contingency rather than pulling out of our reserves. We also pay for insurance expenses for all the student organizations on campus. At UNO, student organizations are a part of a greater group that fall under a collective nonprofit. So we fund the insurance expenses for all the RSOs on campus. We also do provide sustainable transportation options for the student body. The first one being MavRide. MavRide provides free access to bus passes for all students, faculty, and staff when they show their MAV card. So those orange buses you see on Dodge Street, those you guys all have free access to. The next one is a new initiative that we championed this past year. And I would like to give kudos to Nate for really championing that and making sure that this happens. We have the MAV Bike program, which provides really heavily discounted passes. So $156 to $5 to students when signing up for the Heartland B-Cycle electric bike program. They're the blue bike stations you see around campus. And because of this initiative, UNO is actually the most active bike share program in the entire city of Omaha, which is something we should all be really proud of, and encouraging more sustainable transportation in a city like Omaha. The next one is office supplies. So this stays the same, $150. And then through Student Government Association, we have a first-year leadership commission, which aims to develop and promote first-year student leaders on campus. This is through an application basis, but one of their main goals for the entire year is to plan a student body event, and we have allocated $1,000 for that event. The next line item, so now we're moving on to our change request. So this is what we're allocating either for an increase or a reduction in fees. First one is dues, fees, and subscriptions. So this is only increase because we have consolidated all of the dues, fees, and subscriptions throughout our agencies into one single line item. Mainly for Canva Pro subscriptions, we found that it was cheaper to create a team account versus 7 different individual accounts. So that is what that would be used for. And we have deducted like the $120 accordingly to each of our other agencies. And then for programming and marketing, we're seeing that should be in red, but it's a $1,500 decrease. So we're asking for $5,000 for the upcoming year. And that has consolidated awards, gala, programming, public relations, and swearing in line items. This is just to make things a lot more consistent and clear when it comes to what student senators are able to use that money for. There was a lot of confusion in terms of like what can programming be used for versus public relations. Is gala technically a programming event? So just really consolidating that within our budget. And these will be used to fund election parties, civic engagement education, town halls, and SGA also sponsors I Love NU Week. So another increase is student worker wages. Our agency directors are all paid minimum wage and are allocated 10 hours of work per week during the school year and 6 hours per summer. Right now, the minimum wage is $13.50, but it will increase to $15 in 2026. So just expanding on that and increasing it to match the state laws. And also in last year's budget, they were they were decentralized in the agency's budget, but we have decided to allocate them and put it in our regular budget. And then professional development, this line item hasn't been touched in the past 2 years as heavily as we would have liked to. So just to be very cognizant with how we spend our money, we have decided to reduce that amount. And we have consolidated professional development and retreat line items because at the end of the day, those have been used for pretty much the same purposes within SGA's budget. And then lastly, we have decided to zero out the judicial branch line item. The $250 was meant to be for food for our student court justices and election commissioners when they meet for long meetings. But due to the recent policy changes, we're no longer able to provide food for specific individuals if it isn't a group event or a student body event. So we just decided to zero it out. So this one is a really big request. We have decided to look into expanding student legal services. Right now, student legal services employs 3 people, 1 full-time lawyer, 1 paralegal, and 1 student worker. And right now, this office is currently at capacity and are having to turn away students because they just don't have the capacity to serve them. Right now, they, or in 2024, they had over 1,124 cases, which approximately is around 94 cases per month. And if we were to add a second lawyer, it could increase the caseload about 150 to 200 cases per month, which is a substantial increase and would allow us to grow more sustainably in terms of ensuring that the student body feels supported by legal services. Because if we do provide this as a resource and it's being extremely used and very popular within the university, we should allocate more resources towards it and not have the obligation of turning people away. And also with the opportunity to expand, it would also increase what can be practiced within the office. So they would be able to expand their services to include bankruptcy, tax on intellectual property. And then I'll get into this later, but it would also give them an opportunity to potentially look for grants for the upcoming year to essentially create a more sustainable increase for years going forward. So moving on to our agencies, starting with AMS, they're actually requesting a decrease of funding. What their funding will mainly be used for is the expansion of the multicultural library and equipment rentals. So right now, RSOs are able to leverage their equipment for their own personal events through a rental system. So they are looking to expand that, purchase some more equipment for student organizations to use on campus. And they also have a multicultural library within their office. So looking at expanding that and potentially creating an online database through Libby. The next one is programming. So they typically do Heritage Month celebrations for Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So continuing that, but then also expanding into culinary workshops to promote the diversity of food. And then also just promotion of advocacy related work and civic engagement workshops. So for first generation student agency, they're also looking at a decrease, and their funding will primarily be used for semester banquets to celebrate first generation student day and the end of the year and graduation. And these will be open to the entire student body. They also do a school supplies program, which is distributed through Maverick Food Pantry, where they provide free school supplies for the student body. So pens, notebooks, paper, loose leaf paper, pencil bags, things like that. And then also UNO resources basket giveaways. So each month they really want to highlight a UNO resource that has been helping this campus, and then curating gift baskets to promote them. So for instance, like promoting the Math and Science Learning Lab would include a small toy like about a lab kit, like a crystal growing kit, some various information about the resources, and ensuring that students know where they can reach out to. International Student Services is looking at an increase in their budget. They have a couple things that they want to do. Their flagship event is International Banquet, which is held in the spring semester to essentially celebrate all our international students and their successes. It's a pretty big event with almost around 400 people attending every year. They also want to do some more smaller scale events like conversion table and movie nights events to really encourage international students to get more connected to this campus and ensure that they have a support system when they enter UNO. And then also just advertising and recruitment materials. Network of Disability Awareness is looking for an increase as well. And this is just an opportunity for them to create some more educational event programming to discuss disability inclusion, partnerships with agencies to highlight the intersectionality of various identities across our campus, and then also for recruitment materials and tabling merchandise. So our last two agencies, Career and Trans Services, is requesting a decrease. They have two main events that they really fund. The first one is Homecoming Drag Show, which is actually a partnership with MavPro, or this past year has been a partnership with MavPro, and then Queer Prom. And those are their two flagship events that they have in the fall and spring semester, respectively. And then they also do attend a conference. It's called IMBLTAC, and it's an opportunity for QTS members to network with other queer and trans service students across various university campuses. It has been proven to be extremely beneficial for them, and it's something that we would like to continue happening. And then lastly, Women and Gender Equity Center is requesting an increase. So they do important programming such as Week of Action for Abortion Access, Sex Ed Night, Take Back the Night, Sustainable Menstrual Giveaway, and other civic engagement events. They also do want to increase the supply of disposable and reusable menstrual products, and also introduce UTI and ovulation tests into the Essential Supply Program, which provides free essential menstrual or hygiene supplies for the student body. I think it's also really important to be candid about how much we have in our reserves and understanding that this is a really lofty request. So we currently have around $437,386.40 sitting in our reserves. And based on the advisable maximum level, we need to hit $230,653. And because of this, we're willing to cut student legal services line item to $200,000, which is a reduction of that additional lawyer cost. And we'll pull that through reserves. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to ensure that we have a plan in place to spend our reserves down wisely, but also ensuring that we're creating the most maximum good for the student body. Student legal services has been extremely beneficial this past year and is continuing to grow. And by spending our reserves or a portion of our reserves and expanding this, we see this being the greatest benefit towards the student body. In addition, we understand that there have been some concerns about our reserves. So just to be transparent with you all throughout this process, we're looking at changing our reserves policy later this semester, and it will be changed to allow a simple access by majority vote in the Senate. It used to be, it had to go through budget committee and then go to the Senate and then get approved by multiple people. But in reality, the process was too time consuming and was really inefficient for funding large scale projects. So to ensure that our reserves are easier to use, we're looking at implementing this policy. And the objective is to spend down over several years to maximize the number of students seeing benefits. The reason we didn't deduct the 85,000 when we presented this is because we didn't know how we wanted to use our reserves. But after going through multiple options and how we want to spend that, we have decided to add this to our presentation as a cut that we are willing to make. And this is my last slide, just going over the budget that I just went over, and I am now open to questions.
Hello? Okay. Do you have any numbers on like how many students each agency serves? Like roughly?
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I could probably get you some estimates in terms of, are you looking at event attendance or like program numbers? Okay. I will also be really candid with you. We have essentially been defunded for 4 months out of this year. So a lot of like the programming, especially like within the essential supply program, has dwindled where once we run out of products, like we just can't serve students and we can't plan events. So those numbers are maybe not the numbers that can essentially like clarify like how many students we've served in the past, but I'll try to get you this year's number, but also these past year's numbers to ensure that you have a better idea of how many students we serve. Yeah.
Okay. I had a question relating to professional development, if that's all right. Can you tell me a little bit about how professional development will serve the broad base of the student body? The way the line was written, it sounded like it was more internal to student government. Could you describe a little bit about that?
Yes. Yeah, so developing our student senates is really important to how we function as an organization. And we are able to actually spend money on developing our student senators and our student government body, or I guess like agents, to ensure that they are successful in their roles. So that's what that money is allocated towards them for. And there's also going to be checks and balances in place to ensure that the funding that is being utilized for professional development leads to like growth and learning and reflection within the governing body in terms of reflection or documentation to further clarify that this is not a member-only event. Yeah.
Sorry, just waiting for the delay on the mic. For anyone who's using the mics, I think the delay is about 3 to 4 seconds before it turns on. Insofar as the agency's budgets, I noticed some changes, some with increases, some with decreases from the previous year to this year. You mentioned that this is the first year that you have folded the larger student worker wages from the agency budgets into the student government budgets. Do those agency budgets from the previous year, the requested amounts of monies, reflect that change? So for example, if we were to look, is it okay if we go back to the previous slide on say AMS or FGSA?
Yeah, so the FY 24-25 numbers, I'm pretty sure they have they don't? Okay. So they are deducted the Canva Pro subscription and the wages.
Perfect. So that number we're seeing is 24-25 minus whatever wages or subscriptions they received. And then the subsequent 25-26 year reflects what they're requesting for the forthcoming year with the same deducted and moved to other spaces. Thank you.
24-25 has the.
Okay. So 24-25 has the student worker subscription, or oh my gosh, Canva Pro subscriptions, but does not include student worker wages. The 25-26 excludes both.
Perfect. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
So if you want like the accurate estimate of each of these agencies, I would just deduct $120 from each of them. And I can get those numbers to you to make it a bit more comprehensive.
Hello. I guess I kind of had a couple of concerns or questions or comments that I wanted to make regarding the budgets that we are looking at here. I see that the Women and Gender Equity Center, their budget for fiscal year 25-26, compared to all of the other agencies, is quite larger compared to QTS. Matter of fact, previous years, none of those are above $20,000. So I'm trying to understand the justification from raising it from 34,500 to the 38,890. Increased supply of disposable and reusable menstrual products. Are we not reaching enough broad base of the student body to that we would want? I guess, are we not reaching enough of the student body? Is that why we're wanting to increase the supply?
I think it's just based on student demand. So in past years, we've actually run out of this line item, or they've actually run out of funds to like purchase more. So the idea is that they would be able to increase the supply of disposable and reusable menstrual products and also introduce new products into the essential supply program. So student demand has exceeded student supply. Yes, Commissioner.
I had a question regarding the slide relating to reserves and the possible cut from student legal services. Is it okay if we forward? Wonderful. I wanted to first provide an acknowledgement that I think it's very fiscally responsible that you're bringing potential reductions that could be provided to the SABC as an area that could be supplemented with the reserve surplus. I do have pretty significant concern with the idea that a reserve policy having a thorough process for consideration in a budget committee and then consideration by the Senate is the reason that reserves were allowed to grow that large. These processes, to my recollection, were initially designed so that there would be a very straightforward structure so that the reserves would not be overutilized as opposed to the utilization of the budget. For example, Maverick Productions has a rule within their budget organization wherein they say that you cannot spend from the reserves until you've spent down your budget. So I guess I was wondering if you could clarify how the reserve was able to grow to such a substantive amount when there is a protocol for spending it that was designed by the student government and was designed to be accessible, though it does take more time for the reason of not relying on the reserve for projects.
So there are a couple different reasons that this happened. The first one is we actually severely underestimated how much was in our reserves. We got the official reserves number literally last week, which is not good that there were like so many numbers circling around about how much was in our reserves. Another thing is that there was a policy introduced, I think 3 student governments ago, my sophomore year, so 2 or 3, I don't know, where it needed to meet the 1-year threshold of student government revenue. And because of that policy, when we took on student legal services, the threshold jumped from, I think it was like maybe 75,000 to like 375,000. And we actually were operating within a deficit. So we were under the impression that we were not able to touch our reserves at any cost because we are actually working in a deficit and we are currently in the negatives, when in reality, we just completely missed over that the UNO 50% revenue threshold overrides our student government policy, which is why every single reserves proposal from these past like 3 years has gotten turned down. And this policy change would essentially like allow majority access through the Senate vote, but also understanding that it would follow the same purchasing policy that all other purchases have now been able, or that SGA now has to abide by. So it would have to go to budget committee, it would have to go to the director of finance, and then it would get presented to the Senate, passed by simple majority, and then advisor signed. So there are still checks and balances. I think that our misunderstanding of the reserves has been incorrect for at least 3 years. And we're now in a position where we're more knowledgeable about like how much money is in our reserves. And then something that I definitely need to do, a part of one of my job, or I guess duties as student regent, is create a reserves proposal plan in terms of like how to spend it down sustainably, which is why we are presenting this. Yes.
I'll wait a moment to speak actually, in case there's any other questions, because I just had a question. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak before me? I guess I'd just be curious to understand why that necessitates the rationale you provided necessitates decreasing the significance through which the process is utilized for reserves. So for example, we now understand that we can utilize the reserve monies available. Why do we need to decrease the structure with which those funds are considered? Because historically, those funds were provided to the student government by the Student Activities Budget Commission for utilization for a very specific purpose. They have overaccumulated in the reserve amount to a total of almost 100% of your budget. And I think the necessitation of their spending would require considerable review by the student government rather than a more laissez-faire policy that would be simple majority vote by the Senate and special consideration for how that money's being spent. How will you ensure that if you're reducing the guardrails that are in place for reserve utilization, that you're not sidestepping the utilization of the SABC as the appropriate process through which funds are distributed?
Short answer, we have run for a 10-minute timer, so if someone would like to make a motion to extend the questioning period, that can be done now.
I move to extend the time period.
By how much?
I'd say 10 minutes.
Okay, there is a motion for 10 more minutes by Commissioner Levering. Is there a second? By Commissioner Koenig. Now goes to a vote. Yes. All those in favor, would you please hold up your placards? The motion passes. 10 more minutes.
I am so sorry. I actually forgot your question while the voting thing was happening.
I can totally restate it. I guess just a brief TLDR on the question. How will you ensure that if certain guardrails within your current reserve policy are to be removed, that you maintain the integrity of the process of reserve utilization? What I heard in the way that the changes to the policy were describing is a decreasing in regulation to allow for more broad-based reserve use. And while in the immediacy that may allow for more money to be spent, it also potentially risks the utilization of the reserves in ways that are less than appropriate or less than rigorously reviewed, as while each purchase will be reviewed, the exact expenditure distribution towards reserve-related purchases will not undergo the same level of scrutiny that the SABC would have provided.
Okay. So there are a couple ways that SGA amends its policy. The first one is it needs to go through rules committee. So we have a group of senators decide in terms of if this policy is just, if it's fair, and they make their amendments. And then once that gets voted on by rules committee, it then gets presented to our student government senate for the Senate vote. If that passes 2/3, then it gets implemented within our policy index. So there are checks and balances before this policy even gets added to ensure that it's comprehensive, just, and fair. The other thing is that the current financial policy regarding reserves still has that 1-year threshold limit in it. So we do need to get rid of that and ensure that we're following the UNO policy that's a bit more broader in terms of how much is in our reserves. Right now, I think also in that reserves policy, it says it needs to be for large scale student funded either programs, initiatives, or projects. But in reality, I think reserves can be used to supplement portions of our budget that maybe aren't huge, large scale contractual obligations. And that could be an opportunity to use our reserves. And also decreasing that threshold from 2/3 majority to a simple majority could also ensure that reserves are more easier to access. Right now, reserves aren't being used, yes, for the reasons I mentioned, but also it's because it's really hard to get traction for large scale programs and initiatives. For instance, like talking about the MapBike program, that was a 3-year rollout. And it's hard when you have constant student turnover to access reserves on essentially like a semesterly or yearly basis when you have constant senator turnover, exec turnover, elections. So just funding, I guess, smaller initiatives, but also important initiatives is really important to ensure that we are upholding our end of being fiscally responsible and spending down our reserves. I hope that answered your question. If there's anything you want me to clear up, that would be amazing.
No, that answered my question perfectly. Thank you. I think that insight into the rationale helps to clarify because I think the idea of making sure that the reserves can be appropriately utilized and within appropriate parameters as they're required to be under policy is certainly important. I just think the mechanism by which we go about that has to be just as fiscally responsible as this process. So asking questions helps us to be empowered to understand how you would propose to go about that, though understanding also that it still needs to go through the necessary process and protocol. So thank you.
I just wanted to, I guess I just have a concern regarding the student legal services. So, as I understand it, it would be Fund A, right? That is contributing to the $199,000 line item. Is that correct? And so we
Yes.
almost, it looks like for 2025, 26, that's about another $100,000 increase into, I guess, student legal services. I guess I'm just trying to understand the justification on why such a large amount in that particular service.
Yeah, so oh my gosh, this service has been extremely well utilized by our student body and is one of our most popular services that we provide. And right now, with one lawyer, we're at capacity in terms of how many students our lawyer Jacob is able to serve. And with our substantial amount of reserves that we have, we thought the best way to fiscally spend it down would be through funding student legal services by adding an additional lawyer. The reason that this request looks like that is because for SGA to present our budget at SABC, we need to ensure that it gets Senate majority vote. So when our senators were voting on this specific budget, we didn't have an idea of how we wanted to spend down our reserves and what projects and initiatives to fund. So we requested our senators to leave this line item and increase in so that we could come up with a more substantial plan when SABC presentations roll around, which is today. So today, in our reserves estimate, there was a point that said that we are willing to spend $85,000. So that margin of $85,361 through our reserves to essentially pay for the expansion of student legal services. And over the next couple of years, we are hoping to supplement the sustainability of that increase through reserve payments, but also potential grant opportunities. And yeah, so reserve supplementation, but also like grant opportunities that Jacob would be able to seek after if he's not at capacity in terms of dealing with 93 cases per month.
So I guess one of my other concerns regarding this is here you state that if another lawyer, a second lawyer was hired, then that would increase the cases to about 150 to 200 cases per month. And so then, therefore, I think we would be running into the same issue that we're already facing with the one lawyer, right? So I guess on a realistic, is it sustainable to hire a second lawyer, or are there other, I guess, professionals that we should be considering to help manage these cases besides hiring just one or a second lawyer? Are there social workers? I guess I would want more information regarding this, because I don't think if we hire a second lawyer, it looks like we would be running over our shoestring, so to speak, as far as if you do 200 cases per 12 month, I can't do the math here, but again, that would be, over another 1,000 cases. So is that a sustainable practice to hire a second lawyer? So I just wanted to call into question this particular issue regarding student legal services. I mean, I respect your guys' and the center's decisions of how to kind of or expend your reserves, but I do have concerns regarding this large increase regarding student legal services.
Yeah, I 100% understand the sustainability aspect. It's really hard to determine the caseloads that student legal services get, but I can very much attest that if you need legal representation, which UNO offers, and you have a court date and you need someone to show up at court for you, our student lawyer does do that. So it's hours spent on the road. In terms of legal assistance, yes, there are caseworkers. Yes, there are paralegals in place. But if you need actual legal documents signed or need representation, legal representation, your only option is truly a lawyer. So providing that free assistance and legal advice is kind of the reason why we're looking at expanding to a second additional lawyer versus a paralegal or another student worker. But yeah, I can definitely get you some more answers on why this would be a more sustainable increase by working with our student lawyer this upcoming week and getting those to you by deliberation. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Jones, right? James?
Things, that's okay.
Okay.
It's more of a comment for the record. I recognize that there are a variety of important services, goods, and mechanisms, and by the way, presentation, that you all choose to deploy year over year and over a span of time. I can only imagine the challenges that you all have to pursue.
That's good. The comments really, just to sum up a comment for the record, is it must be challenging to determine what could be a cost prohibitive or barrier for student access for legal representation, for example, or supporting a variety of documentations due to impacts outside of the university's control and or outside the student's control. And so I recognize that to be a challenge. I do have a little bit of concern when I think about the retention of students year over year as institutions. Just as a comment for students, it would be unfortunate for students who are unable to return and enroll in courses and complete their education pathway due to a barrier of access to legal services. Just as much, I imagine, would be a concern for students who don't receive a variety of services, goods, or other items that Student Government Association agencies provide. So just want to reflect a comment that that's an impressively challenging position that you're in, and thank you for your information.
Thank you.
Continue to the, if there's more questions, we have hit the next 10-minute mark. So we're out of time for questions unless there is a motion to extend that. Commissioner Meister,
Motion to extend the period of questioning for a period of 10 more minutes.
there's a motion on the floor for 10 more minutes by Commissioner Meister. Second by Commissioner Koenig. Is there any deliberation on this motion? If all in favor could please hold up their placards. The motion passes. 10 more minutes is after the time.
Yes, Commissioner.
I know in the last 2 years, it was a new policy to be paying wages to the organization heads of the SGA organizations. Is there any willingness to pay these wages for the next year out of the reserves and or to consider cutting out either some or all of these wages?
Yeah, that was definitely a consideration that we had, but we realized that when presenting our budget, especially for upcoming years, seeing that gap in student worker wages and not having it zeroed out seemed like it seemed a bit scary in terms of understanding if student worker wages were going to get refunded. And so having that continuity was really important, line item from last year's line item to this year's line item. But we knew that we wanted to fund at least $80K from our reserves for this year. So if it were to get funded through Oh my gosh, through student worker wages. The other 40K would be like through another program like student legal services. So instead of like splitting that cost, we've decided to fund the expansion of student legal services through our reserves. Yes, Commissioner Meister.
Okay, there we go. Just a brief point of information. While there was a recent change in where the student agency director worker wages were located within the budget, they were actually first funded in the 2017-2018 fiscal year. They were just much smaller and were previously stipends and then have grown over time, but have been reflected differently from year to year. It was more recently that they became minimum wage based, but there were previously stipends that started around almost, oh my gosh, almost a decade ago. And then I just wanted to mention something for the record to reflect. I do have questions related to the student legal services item, but I do need to conflict out. This was my student project back in 2021, so.
Yeah, Commissioner Wright.
I guess point of information, is there a way for us to get a breakdown of how legal services is paying for things?
I don't think there's like a specific breakdown due to confidentiality reasons, but we could probably get like, I guess like, yeah, so like we can do a breakdown of their budget, but it wouldn't be as descriptive as one would hope, I guess.
Also, another question. So I'm trying to phrase this. Is there a limit on what type of cases Jacob can take, and how would adding another lawyer help with that?
Yeah, so right now, Jacob has had to stop taking family law cases because they have become a lot more time consuming than what his original workload has had. So he's like referred people out to like affordable lawyers, but that's something that he would be willing to like sort of like do in-house if we were to expand student legal services, and that's been a really large request of his as well. And then he has also had a lot of students ask for bankruptcy tax on intellectual property. I don't know if you know this, we have a lot of student entrepreneurs on campus who need help filing sort of patents and copyright things, and have asked him for intellectual property help. And with that being under his belt as one of his competencies, he would be able to provide that. Yes, Commissioner Heelish, yeah.
Can you break down what the role of the second lawyer would play? Like if they would be able to take the same cases that Jacob takes, or if there would be a difference?
Yeah, so it would essentially be like as cases come in, it would be delegated to one of our two lawyers. And then on top of that, because they would be delegated to one of them, it would give them an opportunity to do a lot more outreach in terms of like grants, proposals, and also spend some more times in increasing their competencies to practice bankruptcy tax on intellectual property. So in terms of like what specific cases each lawyer would handle, I don't know if I have that information, considering that we have yet to hire a second lawyer and don't really know their competencies, but yeah.
Thank you.
President, kind of had some questions regarding the International Student Agency. Their line item last year was about $19,800 for the 24-25 fiscal year, and then that's about a maybe $5,000 or $6,000 increase. I'm just trying to understand their justification. I understand that they do host the international banquet, which is a successful and large event, which I believe reaches the broad-based body of the university. However, I guess I'm calling into question how they would look to spend those extra dollars. I don't know if that will fall in the advertising and recruitment materials. I guess I'm curious what recruitment efforts they are trying to achieve as well.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what conversation tables are.
Yeah, I can definitely provide more clarity into ISS's budget. For some context, last year, or just in recent years, I guess, up to this year, ISS has been working alongside the International Student Department housed in ASH. And so they have a really close relationship. So what that partnership with student government looked like is they would essentially like work underneath that academic department, and then we would essentially like be like a consulting body to help them reach students. But with the ongoing audit and with our new financial policy in place, ISS is no longer to collaborate with academic departments on campus. So they have been more interconnected with student body or student government initiatives and programming. Because of how close they were and like what that distant relationship looked like in years past, the ISS directors would never really communicate with Student Government Association. And last year, they didn't attend any of like the Senate presentations in terms of their budget deliberations. And though they had put in an increase to the Senate, the increase got slashed because they were never able to justify and present to the Senate on why they wanted that increase. So last year when they put in the increase where it didn't go through was to expand international banquet. Because of Sodexo and the food prices, they want to ensure that they're able to provide more food for the students because they are expecting higher student turnout. And then also when they hosted it in Scott campus, just the rental fees in terms of equipment, technology also went up as well. So that was one reason for the increase in terms of international banquet. Additionally, the ISS director wants to ensure that instead of allocating this funding for one specific event, they want to diversify it throughout multiple student events throughout the year, which moves on to the conversation tables and movie night events. So they really want to utilize movie nights and conversation tables to get international students connected to our, I wouldn't say more traditional student body, but just like on-campus students. So engaging in different conversations surrounding culture, heritage, ensuring that students are able to meet international students, and then for them to make new friends as they enter Nebraska. And the movie nights events are just like bonding events that are open to the student body that could showcase international movies and just movies for people to watch and engage in. And then advertising and recruitment materials. I'm not too sure what that looks like, but I think a lot of their advertising and recruitment materials were more in terms of like the international studies department. And so understanding that that collaboration is no longer feasible within our current policy structure, allocating funding for that as well.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Morales.
Hello. I had a question regarding the student legal services. As you are looking to hire a second full-time lawyer, what does the timeline for that look like? And is there someone in consideration right now?
Right now, there's no one in consideration because this is just something we wanted to propose to the commission as something that could potentially be funded either through SABC or through reserves. As we've discussed, we have decided to fund that through reserves. So if this were to get, if her budget were to get approved, the next step would be working with Jacob and determining a timeline for when he wants that second lawyer hired. And then also working with student government exec for the upcoming year to sit in on that process to ensure that our student lawyer is representative of all students on campus.
And then I did have a second question.
Sorry, with that, we have hit the 10-minute mark for the extended question. If there would like to be an extension of any time, that would be the time to now a motion.
I'm open for 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes by Commissioner Levering and then seconded by Commissioner Koenig. 5 more minutes and
We need one more step. We just need to exchange my one.
all those in favor, will you hold up your placards? With that, the motion passes, 5 more is allotted.
My question's regarding the American Multicultural Services request. I apologize if you already expanded on this when you were presenting, but could you just, out of curiosity, could you expand on what kind of advocacy related work they do?
Yeah, so mainly just like civic engagement workshops. They do a So they do an event in partnership with all the agencies to promote like civic engagement, especially with the past election cycle and this upcoming like mayoral election cycle. They do a lot of civic advocacy work in relation to that. And then also advocacy in terms of like standing up for multicultural students, promoting heritage months, and I guess like advocacy in terms of like promotional materials would be a better way to put it in tangent with like events. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. If you have any more questions between now and then, I'm pretty sure Drew can send you guys my email. I completely forgot to include it on the presentation, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Moving on in the agenda, I just have a couple of quick announcements. One is I know that there are some issues with the SharePoint access right now. We are actively working on trying to get you full access to the SABC files. I will send out an email when you guys do get full access. So please just watch your email and you can refer to any of the materials you saw today, plus some extras. The other thing is our next meeting is the deliberations, which takes place next Tuesday at 5 o'clock in CPAX 222. And there's a little bit of a hiccup with the food situation. So if you could show up just, again, 5 to 10 minutes early, because, we'll either have runners getting the food from Milo, or you'll have to come to Milo, then take it back to CPAX. So just be planned for like 4:50 on Tuesday. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? A motion by Senator Meister to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Benitez. Is there any deliberation? All those in favor, please raise your placards. With that, the meeting is adjourned.
That's so good. Yeah, like that thing, because I was itching to pick up on something, but I was taking note. Yeah, because we thought about that, but it basically. Yeah, yeah, they have 4 or 5 lawyers, really, honestly, I can't remember off the top of my head, but using that, they don't have those times. They're kind of modeling that based on their student populations. We have 14,000, they have 24,000 students, which is just over half as many as they have, right? So like 2 lawyers, we're expecting to be a limit, right? Where it is. The other area that we're trying to do strategic with that expansion is like, like a grant sort of thing where it's like, once we have people, who can be in 2 places at once, because right now there's a lot of schedule where like, just because there's one person who's be able to place it at a time, they can't plan who's where. Right. Oh, yeah. So hopefully it'll be there, but that was really serious. Oh, and that's the area that gives me, that's the area that gives me hope, because I know when student modeled by this year, there was